There it is, our first virtual meetup. We're looking forward to it. It's actually next Thursday, the 14th, 6:30 to 8:30. I think maybe there's one or two spots. I'm hoping this guy joins because he's super smart, funny. I feel like his true funny doesn't get a chance to come out here enough. He's really like one of the funniest people I know, but he's forgotten more about politics than any of us will ever know, and he is so brilliant. Michael Shure, everybody.
My funeral has just happened, I think. So
yes, it's. I do seem to eulogize you from time to time, but I love that you spend a moment with us. And as we talk, the State of the Union message has just been completed. So we're actually recording this the night before, in the interest of full disclosure, because we, for a lot of reasons, technical reasons, couldn't pull it together on the on day of. So in any case, Joe Biden came out really throwing heat, I thought. Michael, what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I thought so too. The only, you're going to hear all this breakdown of, was it good enough? Was it too strong? Did he mention Trump or imply Trump too many times? Was it too political? Was it too loud? Was it too long? Was it too late? All of that. Nobody's going to go into the booth in November and say, you know what? I remember that State of the Union address. Now I'm going to vote for Biden. I mean, so what Joe Biden's job is to not seem 81 or as 81 as he is purported to be. And to that end, I think that it was a good night for the president. I think that he came out, showed that he was fiery, showed that he was smart. He improvised a couple of jokes. He didn't seem lacking, and I think he certainly seemed forceful. Now, that's the only thing that he has to continue to do and maintain. This isn't about the content of the speech and or the response or who said what and sat next to what and screamed what and what names got wrong. I think we overblow what this is, but it certainly was not a report to the Congress about the State of the Union. This was as campaigny a speech as I'd heard, but I think he's somebody who, at 38% needs to do some campaigning too, and this is a good forum.
Aren't they generally campaigny?
They're political. They're not campaigny. I suspect I shouldn't say absolutely that they're not campaigny. You'd have to watch the ones that happen in an election year where a president's up for re-election. But I think I've never heard a direct sort of as many direct references to the opponent not being the Republicans in Congress that he has to work with and that his Democrats have to work with, but the opponent being the person he's going to face in the fall. So that was something that was unusual. It doesn't make it bad or untoward or anything. It just this is that's what this has become. We're watching television. They walk in, they walk the aisle. It's as much about, oh, look, did you see what he said to Mitt Romney, that he's got a lot of integrity, or did you see that he walked right by X, Y, or Z? None of that really, none of it matters.
Yeah. In the moment, I guess a big thing. But
what matters for President Biden is that he seems strong, and he seems strong tonight.
I want to ask you something that was, we'll play a little bit of his speech, and we'll also play a little bit of the response, which was absolutely mind-bogglingly over the top, and it was like a bad drama class, the response. But anyway, I want to ask you something about just decorum. I understand we've lost all civility in Washington. The Washington that we grew up in is not the Washington that exists now. Right. The divisions are intense. And the premium on building your own personal brand as kind of a rebel, it would seem, is higher than ever. That said, is there no end? Is there no threshold for what's acceptable as the State of the Union speech is going on? It seems to me it passes heckling and takes it into like sort of other territory.
Yeah, I think that with Trump's departure, some of that will go away. Joe Wilson, you remember, from South Carolina, when Barack Obama was there before, when Donald Trump was just a guy in New York and Barack Obama was giving the State of the Union, he screamed out, "You lie." And people were aghast at that. And people still talk about it. I remember that it was Joe Wilson that one time. But now it's a clown show. And now it's a little bit different. It's people wearing MAGA hats and T-shirts and trying to get in the president's face. And it's sort of ugly, but I think that's look, what Donald Trump has done, which is good for the people for whom he's done it, but bad, I think, for the civil discourse and the kind of what we knew, is that he's given a hall pass to people to do and say whatever they want, because that's what he does. And so I think you see it come out in Congress. You also look, I mean, when what you were talking about, Mark, is probably a way we never were either. I mean, there weren't cameras, there weren't tweets, there weren't those sorts of things. I'm sure it was just as ugly and divided, and I'm sure there was just as much snickering and, you know, whispering to the man or woman next to you about about what the president was saying during the State of the Union. So I don't know that it's a huge departure, but it's certainly a departure. And even if it's what we think was happening, it's different by great length to what we thought was happening. So I think it will go with Trump. You know, I've said it on this show before. I've said it to other people. I think that he's like Tiger Woods in a sense, which is that I think that a lot of people come to watch Donald Trump and what he brings. And when he's off the stage, those people will fade away, most of them, in the same way that if you don't like golf, you're going to watch, even if you don't love it or know it or anything. If Tiger's golfing, a lot of people are watching golf. When he's not, a lot of people fall away. And I think
that there are some congressional rules actually against wearing signage and special stuff.
Yeah, there are, and I think we'll probably hear about that going forward. I mean, I don't know what those are for State of the Union. I know that you can't go into the Speaker's lobby, which is right behind the Speaker's podium there, which is where everybody congregates if you're not dressed properly, even if you're a member of Congress. So there's certainly some of that, but again, I think
at a comedy show, which to me is like sort of the low bar for decorum, they would possibly remove Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, with that kind of heckling. So anyway.
Well, I thought he played her really well. He came in, she had this shirt on and was saying, say her name, about a woman in Georgia who was killed by an illegal immigrant. And the president picked up the button in the middle of the speech. Like, he stopped and talked to her on the way in. The president engaged her, which I think shocked her. He picked up a button in the middle of the speech and said this woman's name. Said it wrong, but said the woman's name. He got the.
It was close. I know that lots being made of him saying it wrong. You have it, Kim? We can play it. But then I do want to play some other parts of the speech. But I felt like they're dining out on that right now. Like, he didn't even know her name. But maybe, all right, it was, it's one of those things. If you don't have it, Kim, don't worry about it. But let's listen to a little bit of the speech. This is the beginning of Joe Biden's
Former
speech.
Republican president tells Putin, quote, do whatever the hell you want. That's a quote. A former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader. I think it's outrageous, it's dangerous, and it's unacceptable. America is a founding member of NATO, the military alliance of democratic nations, created after World War II to prevent war and keep the peace. And today, we've made NATO stronger than ever. We welcomed Finland to the alliance last year. And just this morning, Sweden officially joined, and their minister is here tonight. We're going to stand up. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And they know how to fight. Mr. Prime Minister, welcome to NATO, the strongest military alliance the world has ever seen. I say this to Congress, we have to stand up to Putin. Send me a bipartisan national security bill. History is literally watching. History is watching. If the United States walks away, it will put Ukraine at risk. Europe is at risk. The free world will be at risk, emboldening others to do what they wish to do us harm. My message to President Putin, who I've known for a long time, is simple. We will not walk away.
This was odd to me. You got a lot of applause in the room, even from some GOP members there. You could see Mike Johnson behind. But the reality is that they are walking away. The GOP is now pulling the plug on funding to Ukraine.
In
So there's a
literal
certain
sense,
dissonance, a cognitive dissonance there.
History is watching.
Thoughts on that chunk? That was really the chunk he led with.
Yeah, I mean, he led with. He also didn't let himself get introduced by Mike Johnson twice, which is the sort of tradition of. He just went right into his speech rather than, members of Congress. It's my high honor and privilege to introduce the President of the United States, and they applaud him, and then, he does it again. With some of the pomp and circumstance, it's great, but Biden just started, and they were like, "All right, let's just sit down." And they took the mic away, everything. So yeah, I mean, this is one of the big political issues that are happening right now. That's happening right now in Congress, and whether it's abandoned or not, it's not dead yet. But certainly, they're going to have to find a way to get Ukraine funding because the Senate and the majority in the Senate, both with many Republicans and the Democratic majority, wants a bill and wants a government spending bill that has Ukraine in it. So they're going to have to find a way to do that. Getting it separate from Israel is something that people in the House want because they don't want it just to be tied together to tie it together. And the Israel funding is of a different, Republicans want to fund Israel for different reasons. And so I think that was very State of the Union-y to me. That's where he comes in. He says what he wants. These are our priorities. We've got to get it done, and this is why. And he's telling the American people, but this isn't addressed to Congress really, why it's important. And that has political ramifications, but it also is basically a president saying, this is my agenda, which is usually what these speeches are, like them or not. And this one veered off into more political, like it or not, too.
He detailed a lot of the economic gains and kind of compared to before and after.
Right.
That seems, I always feel as though Biden can point to that. I mean, it's an extremely effective fact. Yeah.
He's going to have to start doing it. What's difficult for Biden and unfortunate for Biden is the cost of a loaf of bread, which is the cost that a voter feels immediately, is still not come down in the way it ought to. And that's what a lot of people are saying hasn't happened. Even as the economy improves, it still costs me more to buy bread than it did 3 years ago, 5 years ago, what have you. I think in time that message will get through. I mean, this is, again, we're thematic. Like we do this once a week and we talk about it, but some of these things haven't really changed. They have not begun to spend the money they have to message these things. And once that happens, certainly those numbers will change. Will they go all in favor of the president? Likely not. Those kind of numbers don't happen very often, but they'll certainly get better. And the overall number will get better too when they start spending money on the message.
Kim, we were just going to drop in one more if we can. Here's a little bit more from the State of the Union last night.
Checks, massive executive pay when it's only supposed to be $1 million that could be deducted. They can pay him $20 million if they want, but deduct $1 million. End it now. There are 1,000 billionaires in America. You know what the average federal tax is for those billionaires? No. They're making great sacrifices, 8.2%. That's far less than the vast majority of Americans pay. No billionaire should pay a lower federal tax rate than a teacher, a sanitation worker, or a nurse.
This feels like a win for him, Michael. This.
Yeah, it does, definitely.
And the minimum tax for billionaires at 25%, just 25%. You know what that would raise? That would raise $500 billion over the next 10 years. And imagine what that could do for America. Imagine a future with affordable child care. Millions of families can get they need to go to work to help grow the economy. Imagine a future with paid leave, because no one should have to choose between working and taking care of their sick family member. Imagine a future of home care and elder care, and people living with disabilities, so they can stay in their homes and family caregivers can finally get the pay they deserve. Tonight, let's all agree once again to stand up for seniors. Many of my friends On the other side of the aisle, I want to put Social Security on the chopping block. If anyone here tries to cut Social Security, Medicare, or raise the retirement age, I will stop you.
So that's his run on, and that's an effective pitch on something he wants, which is higher corporate taxes. And he reminds us of something that he talked about, I think, in his last State of the Union, which is, hey, this getting rid of Social Security or privatizing it or modifying it and all the ways to cut it back, that's what the GOP wants to do. We don't want to do that on the Democratic side.
Yeah, and the GOP says they don't want to do that, but still, what you say is true, and this is the blueprint for his campaign speeches. To me, though, again, the most important thing that you saw there was when, to me, about Joe Biden, what he needs to convince the American people is he's still this sharp man who can say, well, you know, do you know what the average tax rate they pay is? A bunch of people are saying 0. And he says, no, they're making a big sacrifice. He's improvising that. It's not, you know, uproariously funny, but it just shows that he is paying attention, and he is, which, you know, you say this about an 81-year-old person, reacting perfectly to the moment and continuing his narrative by saying, no, they're making a big sacrifice, 8.2%. And then he goes right back into what he has to say. I think those are the things that I looked for here. People talk about, will he meet the moment? You know, the moment for Joe Biden is being able to convince people that he's fine and that he can serve as president. And he's got to do that for the next, 9 months and 8 months, something like that. And if he can do that, then he can win re-election. If he can't do that, there's not a chance in hell. And I think this went a long way towards showing that, that he had a kind of sharpness that you would never have, that people have said that he doesn't have. And I think that was important.
Yeah, that's a really great point, that he showed a kind of nimble quality almost that is really something that is not part of the narrative about Joe Biden, even from his own party, which is the amazing thing to me. The momentum that this whole idea of pulling him out of the game has gotten from his own party is it's alarming. And it's kind of late in the game, Michael, just because I mentioned it, isn't it, to kind of pull out a quarterback who has won for you, even though he's way, if you wanted to extend the parallel, he's behind now?
It depends on what the score of the game is, right? I mean, if you're late in the game and you're not getting any offense and, you're not scoring points and you're down, what do you have to lose? Pull the quarterback and put someone else in. They're not. In
this case, it's kind of a tie game, wouldn't you say?
Well, yeah, I would say it's a tie game. They haven't really started yet, right? I mean, if you have what's on paper and then you have what's part of the game. And now Donald Trump is clearly going to be the nominee and Joe Biden's clearly going to be the nominee after Super Tuesday, after Nikki Haley, the former president's only, competition dropped out of the race. Joe Biden had nominal competition, and whether they're in it or out of it is of no moment to him. What's important is the game's about to start, and then you make those judgments. But judging from tonight, there's no need to, pull the QB.
I want to get back to Nikki Haley and some of the numbers that her entire run revealed. Soft spots for Donald Trump. We'll do it in a second. But I first want to touch on the fact that he did mention Israel and he did mention Gaza, and he mentioned it toward the latter part of the speech. Thoughts on that?
Well, look, it's a very difficult place for an American president, these issues. None of them are easy, right? I mean, you're going to have people that are up against you all the time. There are not a lot of easy jobs in politics. Mike Johnson, for example, the Speaker of the House, what he had to do tonight, not an easy job. Whether you love him or hate him or think he's the most backwards man in politics, sitting up there and just not being able to applaud, but, being the person who told his caucus to have decorum tonight, trying to bite his tongue and everything. It's sort of a no-win unless you just sit there stoically the whole night, I think. And so the president on Israel, it's a tough place, right? Because there is an Israel lobby that's very powerful, that has a lot of Democrats in it. But there's also this massacre that's been going on in Gaza, whether reasoned or not, it's still a massacre and people are dying. So what he did, I think he's taking the right steps right now. And I think a lot of people will say that he is. But he didn't say anything about ceasing the funding of Israel, which is what a lot of Democrats, a lot of people under his tent wanted to hear. A lot of voters in Michigan and Minnesota, a lot of members of Congress, and forget Michigan and Minnesota, all across the country, as we've seen in waves. And whether you agree with these people or not, he's playing a game of politics to win the presidency again. And he has to figure out, and his people have to help him figure out what goes into that calculus. I think that he played it pretty well. I think this humanitarian aid stuff is important, but I think he has to be, personally just doing the analysis, I think he has to be more vocal against Netanyahu and against what they are doing at this point to make political hay here. That's what I would be telling him if I were.
They're building a structure essentially offshore of Gaza to allow humanitarian relief. If you want to play a little bit of this, Kim, but then I want to get to the...
No U.S. boots will be on the ground. A temporary pier will enable a massive increase in the amount of humanitarian assistance getting into Gaza every day. And Israel must do its part. Israel must allow more aid into Gaza to ensure humanitarian workers aren't caught in the crossfire. And they're announcing they're going to have a crossing in northern Gaza. To the leadership of Israel, I say this: humanitarian assistance cannot be a secondary consideration or a bargaining chip. Protecting and saving innocent lives has to be a priority. As we look to the future, the only real solution to the situation is a two-state solution over time.
And then you could see the cutaway there of those who've been some of the most vocal critics of.
I think there are a lot of people that are looking for the president to admonish Netanyahu for this sustained, action in Gaza, and I think that he fell short of that. Doesn't mean, he was critical. He's talking about the positive things that can be done. He didn't say the word ceasefire, and people wanted him to say the word ceasefire. He doesn't have to say the word ceasefire. He just didn't say it. I think, though, that the people who in these pockets of Muslim voters and the people who are sympathetic to what's happening to the Gazans, who doesn't mean they don't care about what happened in Israel, but there has to be they want some sort of admonition to Israel, and they want to see a sustained ceasefire. The president says there's going to be a ceasefire, but that remains to be seen still.
The GOP response was offered up from a kitchen, supposedly her own kitchen, and it was done by this junior senator from, is it Alabama?
Alabama. She's the woman. She was a member of Congress, and she ran and won the seat of the retiring Richard Shelby last time.
So she was this bizarre, and I say bizarre because I'm not even talking about the facts. I'm just talking about the performative aspects of it. She was super over the top. Kim, do you have any of that, or do we have any, or no, you do not? That's too bad. But it just did conclude. So to be fair, it may be, maybe you can knock around. YouTube has a bunch of it. But I guess what then I would just skip to is, to me, it was just, it was comical, and we'll have spoken of it a bit in the first hour. Sadly, you won't be able to weigh in on it, but I am going to ask you just in general about responses, Democratic or Republican responses. Do people hang out for those, or is really like the main show's over and now, after the headliners come off, nobody's hanging out for the next act? They
only matter when they're bad.
Okay.
Is really the answer to that question. And there have been some bad ones, but they don't, in the history of time, matter. They matter for a moment. We're talking about it. People will likely talk about this. I've gotten texts about, whoa, what the hell was that? And it matters to, let's say the president got bad reviews. Let's say people didn't like what he said. Well, if the response was spectacular in some ways, you can say, well, here's the balance, is the Republicans did a great job and the president was terrible. But if she did terribly and they wanted her to do really well, then, it matters for a moment there. I love politics and I love this stuff, and I watch it over and over, and I'll watch the arrival and the departure. I'm a geek about this stuff. That doesn't mean it matters. I just like, I'm also a curmudgeon about how important it is, because I don't think it's very important. It's the theater of politics, which I love. But so I don't think anybody's hanging on the words of Katie Britt tonight. But I think that if it becomes lampooned, then it's going to be a worse thing for the Republicans than they intended.
When you, oh, there she is. We'll listen to a little bit of it now, but I want to move on quickly.
I traveled to the Del Rio sector of Texas. That's where I spoke to a woman who shared her story with me. She had been sex trafficked by the cartels starting at the age of 12. She told me not just that she was raped every day, but how many times a day she was raped.
I have to ask you to stop this now. It's going to be, I'm demonetized already now because of this. And secondly, I don't know, I kind of think that her over-the-topness here actually is appropriate given the nature of a sex crime. So it's hard for me to be harsh with her here. But she had this level of outrage and faux emotion through the entire thing. It's as though she was talking about that for everything. Go ahead, Kim. Continue, please.
The result is tragic, but foreseeable. From our small towns to America's most iconic city streets, life is getting more and more dangerous. And unfortunately, President Biden's weakness isn't just hurting families here at home. He is making us a punchline on the world stage. Look, where I'm from, your word is your bond. But for 3 years, the president has demonstrated that America's word doesn't mean what it used to. From abandoning our allies in his disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan to desperately pushing another dangerous deal with Iran.
So there you go. You get a little bit of it. And it's also odd just from the standpoint of the substantive aspects of what she's saying. She talks about abandoning allies, and you've got Ukraine on the table, and that's already, the GOP is standing in the way of that. You have a border deal that she also references, and that's something that the GOP is also blocking. It was weird, and you can see from a performative standpoint, she has, the look away, it was like a bad TikTok after a first take. You do two more and get it right. But I don't know. I don't hear Michael. Oh, sorry. Is Michael muted?
Michael's.
Go ahead.
Okay. There are theatrics to it that seem over the top to me. I didn't see it in its entirety. Also, if you're going to be in the kitchen, you talk about kitchen table issues, which she may have. But I mean,
she touched on them. Sure, she touched on them. To be fair.
Look, it was kind of weird, and I said this to you before we got on the air to you and Kim, that when I'm out in the field talking to voters, the amount of time that voters spend talking about sex trafficking, which I'm not to minimize the issue, but how it's a Biden weakness for some reason. It goes back to a lot of these conspiracy theories about, pedophiles and all of that, and Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. It just seems so out there that an Alabama Republican who is tied to the president, as most of them are, would be saying this stuff. It fits right into what they've been saying to me now for months and months and months and months.
Yeah, you're out there at all those rallies and talking to so many of these supporters of the former President Trump. Now I want to quickly, and then I'll let you go. You've been so great to weigh in on this. Talk about quickly the primaries, which it is suggested. There are two things I thought of you. I'll get to the suggestion of the soft spot. We talked about it a bit for Trump.
People say I was talking about you because they only talk about you when you're absolutely right or absolutely wrong.
You are absolutely right. You're absolutely right about polls. And here's how I thought of you, because in Vermont, it was not forecast in the polling that I saw anyway. Maybe you can correct me that Trump would do anything but win in Vermont. And how did it work out?
It didn't work out. Haley will always have Vermont and D.C.
Yeah. So I thought of you. I thought, Michael Shure always talks about the fact that, the methods of polling, flawed. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes they're not. And here they're not. So,
but to be fair, they work very hard, and it's been pollsters have had a monumental adjustment with the advent of the cell phone. I mean, it has been destroying. It has destroyed polling for a while, and they're still climbing out of the rubble trying to figure out how to do that. But with texting and cell phones and robocalls not really working anymore, there's this whole. So they have a huge challenge, but they're not there yet.
So that was one thing. That was when I thought of you. But now in exit polling, the Nikki Haley crowd, those who were exit polled, many of them were saying, and I think the percentages are fairly significant, north of 25%, that they would not vote for Donald Trump. They were never Trumpers.
Yeah, I'm seeing you're seeing that with every chunk she gets. Yeah, did she lose 58-40 in New Hampshire by a walloping? I mean, don't quote me on those numbers, but about that, she got walloped in New Hampshire. She got walloped in South Carolina. But when you're pulling 40%, and a good percentage of those people are not going to vote for Donald Trump in the fall, that does signify that there's a problem that the Republicans have on their hands. And there's some acreage there for the Biden people as you go forward. And the other thing is that it's up to the Democrats to bring the people out who they need to bring out to win anyway. So you got to start with those. Let the Republicans fall into place. And
I also saw, and we put up these stats earlier in the week if people want to go back and look, but 66%, I think it was, or somewhere around 65 or 66% of, again, those who voted for Nikki Haley generally approve of the job that Joe Biden is doing as president. I mean, that's astounding as well. From that crew, it seems like some may come over for the Democrats.
Well, the Democrats need to see that happen in a place with a greater population.
That's true. Yeah, I mean,
they need to see that in states like Wisconsin, and states like Michigan, and states like Pennsylvania and Arizona. If that starts to become a trend, then that's bad news for Trump and his campaign.
Michael, you've been great to spend time with us, and thank you. I will ask you, I think you indicated, but I'm not really sure whether you have indicated you'll be with us for a couple of minutes, stop in for 15 minutes or so for our meetup next Thursday.
I am almost certain to be able to do that. So
all right, that's very good news.
We'll talk about it a little later, Mark, but I expect to be there.
All right. You're just the coolest to be with us. Thank you so much. Yeah, and Michael Shure, everybody. Thanks, Michael. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.